The hymn we are reflecting on this week has been chosen by a very faithful member of the congregation, and accordingly, the hymn itself reflects the desire to live life as a faithful pilgrimage as we journey together towards the life and light of God. Who would true valour see is the only hymn we have from the 17th century author John Bunyan. The verses are a part of Bunyan's religious allegory of 1678, The Pilgrim's Progress, an English classic of evangelical theology. Pilgrim's Progress recounts, in allegorical form, the experience of a person called Christian, from the first awareness of his own spiritual need to his personal conversion to Christ and his life as a believer. The book follows Christian's pilgrimage to the celestial city, his true and eternal home. Bunyan's work was an immediate sensation, and its popularity has endured for well over 300 years as a classic in English literature. The words of the hymn are spoken by Mr. Valiant for Truth to Mr. Greatheart. These words' usefulness as an actual hymn for singing was spotted by a congregational minister in Brighton some 200 years later, and ultimately settled down with the tune Monk's Gate. Like many a hymn tune, Monk's Gate has its origins in a traditional folk tune, which Ralph Vaughan Williams picked up in 1904 in West Sussex from a Mrs. Harriet Verrill, who herself was a resident of the village, Monk's Gate. We might think that in today's world, some of the language of the hymn might seem remote to younger generations. That being said, hobgoblins and foul fiends are also the staple of writers like Tolkien and other more modern fantasy authors. The theme of life as a spiritual battle and pilgrimage makes sense when you consider the context in which Bunyan wrote. And as is so often the case, the most turbulent and stretching times in history provide the most searching and striking periods of theological thought, reflected both in writing and in song. What was Bunyan's own story which formed the shape and sentiment of the hymn? He was born in 1628 near Bedford, son of a tinker. Bunyan had little schooling and he served during the English Civil War in the Parliamentary Army. During these turbulent and violent times, with all their competing loyalties and questions, he experienced an acute spiritual anxiety, finally finding the peace he was searching for within the fellowship of a Baptist congregation. He became a lay preacher while earning a living as a tinker himself during the time of Cromwell's Commonwealth. After the restoration of the monarchy and the established church in 1660, however, Bunyan was viewed as a Puritan sympathiser and with great suspicion. Non-conformist religious meetings, which had hitherto been permitted, even accommodated in the sanctuaries of the established church, were now banned. Bunyan and others were ordered to stop preaching. He refused, and he was sentenced to imprisonment several times during his life, where he spent the time studying and preaching to his fellow prisoners, and writing, of course. It's believed that it was during his first period of imprisonment that Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress and gave us the foundation for this much-loved hymn. For sure, there are times for all of us when life feels like a battle, and when fortitude and resilience are what are needed in the face of seemingly unbeatable odds. But then we meet so many people in our own lives who, despite great obstacles and suffering of none of their own making, yet prevail, and better still, encourage us to be true to our own values of love, faithfulness to the gospel, and living a good life in an uncertain world. In recent times, across many Christian traditions, there's been a great resurgence of interest in the theme of pilgrimage. There's been an outpouring of writing on the spirituality of pilgrimage itself, as well as personal accounts of people's own pilgrimage to significant and meaningful places. All this literature and liturgy helps us view our own lives through the metaphor of pilgrimage, a pilgrimage which in the end leads us home into the arms of God. Enjoy Bunyan's hymn.